It is time to close out the final tail of the tape among the top 3 wide receivers with Rome Odunze. I'm going to be tackling his entire profile from start to finish. You're going to want to stick around right to the end on this one, so let's get into it. All right, Rome Odunze, wide receiver of the Washington Huskies. This is his tail of the tape. Standing 6'3", 212 pounds. He was born on June 3rd, 2002. He will be just a smidge under 22 years of age on the night of the draft. He is a senior, but he is a young senior. So Rome Odunze, a lot has been made about his analytics profile and his age-adjusted production. I'm going to kind of break that down here. Odunze was a 4-star recruit in the 2020 recruiting class, the number 22 wide receiver in that class coming out of Las Vegas, Nevada. He arrived at Washington in a COVID-shortened season where the Washington Huskies played just 4 games. So the fact that he's a senior is a little bit more understandable, knowing that his freshman season was pretty much completely wiped out by COVID-19. In 2021 and 2022, he posted very solid numbers. And like I said, what was basically his freshman and sophomore year, going 69 targets, 41 receptions, 414 yards, and 4 touchdowns in his second season. 110 targets, 1,145 yards, and 7 touchdowns as a junior. And then, of course, his 2023 season was absolutely spectacular. 140 targets, which led the country. 13 touchdowns, 1,639 receiving yards, which also led the country. People like to dig at his profile. They like to say, oh, he's a senior. He's not an early declare. That's important for fantasy, and it is, but not necessarily the whole piece of the pie. He got so much better his senior season than he did coming in 2022. Had he come out last year for the NFL draft, he probably goes in the top 50, top 75 overall picks. And this year, he's going to go in the top 10 overall picks. So big time improvement for Rome Odunze. I have no qualms with him going back to school because he turned himself into a bona fide first rounder. The big improvement, according to actually the broadcast of the Sugar Bowl, so the game against Texas, what they said on the broadcast was part of the reason why Rome Odunze got so much better this year is because he added 10, 12 pounds of muscle to his frame junior to senior season. It was so effective because he led the country in receiving yards and receiving targets. He also ranked 8th in PFF receiving grade and 20th in yards per route run. But the biggest discrepancy between his profile before and his profile now after his senior season was his 74.1% contested catch rate this year compared to the 29.6% contested catch rate his prior seasons combined. So that added strength really did him a lot of good in the final season of his college career. In terms of expected draft position, as I talked about, he is expected to go somewhere in the top 10 of the 2024 NFL draft. He could go as high as number 5 to the Chargers, number 6 to the Giants, number 7 to the Titans, number 8 to the Falcons, number 9 to the Bears, number 10 to the Jets. That's probably his floor, to be honest. Rome Odunze, probably likely to be a top 10 pick, even though there's 2 other potential top 10 picks in this draft class at the same position. A great historical success rate. If you get that kind of draft capital, you're going to get every chance to be the number 1 for your team, especially when you were this productive in college football. So let's look at the traits. And again, as I've talked about with the previous tail of the tapes, we do not have any film clips that I'm able to show you guys on YouTube because we got dinged for that last year. But me and Danny did break down all 22 film of Rome Odunze, and that is live on the site right now. So if you guys want to check out a film breakdown of Rome Odunze, the link down below for that will be in the description. We also did Marvin Harrison's as well and Malik Neighbors, and we're going to aim to have about 15, 20, 25 prospects by the time the NFL draft kicks off. So the first area that we're going to look at is route running separation, right? The most fundamental thing for NFL wide receivers is, can you get open? And Rome Odunze is a very gifted route runner at all 3 phases of his route. He's very good at the release. He knows how to win against press coverage, tight coverage, because he has the size and the strength to do that. He's also very physically imposing throughout the route as well. 6'3", 212 pounds. When you're hand fighting with this dude, you're going to feel it the next morning. He's a smooth operator as well. Very good at creating what I like to call late separation or subtle separation. I've seen people say that they don't really like how many contested situations Rome Odunze ends up in. And people said the same thing about Jamar Chase. People said the same thing about Drake London. But what they don't really understand is the way that these 3 guys all win is that they're very subtle at the top of their routes. They're not going to break your ankles throughout the route, but what they're going to do is use good hand technique, late hands when it comes to like back shoulder fades and stuff, and it's going to look like they're way more open than they actually are, and that's why they win contested catches at such a high rate. So yeah, Odunze isn't going to absolutely scorch you off the line of scrimmage and leave you on the ground like maybe a smaller wide receiver like a Tank Dell or something like that would, but right before he breaks off of his route, he creates that subtle 1 to 2 yards of separation with physicality, with his ability to sink his hips at 6'3", 212 pounds. And anybody who says this guy can't separate is just flat out wrong, in my opinion. If they think he can't separate, they're just not watching the proper film, in my opinion. You don't have a top 8 receiving grade in the country without being able to separate at a high level. You don't lead the country in yards and in targets while competing, by the way, with Jalen McMillan and Jalen Polk, who I have top 12 grades on in this draft class, without being a good separator. So I'll just put that discussion to bed right now. Rome Odunze is an excellent separator, really smart route runner, really smooth operator, and there's a reason, guys like Daniel Jeremiah and, big name draft analysts think he's like a top 5 player in this class, regardless of position. So once you get open, you need to be able to catch the ball. And this, like I said, was definitely his biggest improvement from his previous 3 seasons in college football to 2023. As I mentioned, he had 10, 12 pounds to his frame, goes from a career 29.6 contested catch rate to a 74.1% contested catch rate in 2023, going 21 of 28 on contested catch opportunities this past year. He also only dropped 3 passes this year on 140 targets, so after struggling with double-digit drop percentages in his freshman and his sophomore season, he's gotten a lot better in this area, which is something you love to see because it means he's been working at it. He's also very physically imposing at the catch point as well. He knows how to shield defenders. He knows how to contort his body. He knows how to get his feet in bounds when he's along the sideline. Some of the best, hands, body control, contested catch ability in this 2024 wide receiver class. I've graded 23 wide receivers. Only 1 receiver graded out better than Rome Odunze in terms of his overall hands. So number 3 on this list is yards after catch ability. So get open, catch the ball, do something with it. He's a strong player given his size. He can win in the open field with raw strength. If you try and tackle him with arm tackles or you don't wrap up, he's going to refuse to go down on first contact, and he's going to fight through tackles of smaller defensive backs. He's not the most gifted wide receiver in this class when it comes to making you miss, but he did force 15 missed tackles on 92 receptions this year, which was a 15.2% missed tackles force rate. For reference, that's less than half of Malik Neighbors, though. So with these 2 guys, the difference between them is that Malik Neighbors is much better after the catch. I'd love to see that power be the reason Rome Odunze breaks more tackles, because I think he tries to make people miss, and he's not quite as good at it as he would be if he just went through them. But regardless, his yards after catch ability is more than adequate for an X wide receiver, especially one that's going to separate at the level that he's going to, and he's going to be able to, turn a 6-yard curl route into a 14-yard gain. He's just not going to break off the 75-yard touchdown that Malik Neighbors might do on a slant pattern. So the most fundamental jobs a wide receiver has is get open, catch the football, and do something with it. And Rome Odunze checks all 3 boxes at a high level, even if when he gets the ball in his hands, he's not quite elite to the point that a Jamar Chase or a Malik Neighbors or somebody like that is. So number 4 on this list is your ability to affect all 3 levels of the field. And again, it's rare that you see a true alpha wide receiver like Rome Odunze who dominates targets all over the field. Not just short, not just medium, not just intermediate. Usually the guys that are posting 140 targets on a season and leading the country in targets are getting force-fed screen passes. They're getting force-fed slant passes or whatever. And that is not Rome Odunze. His average depth of target this year was over 15 yards. This was a guy that worked downfield as a primary deep threat, but also did stuff all over the field. Of all the wide receivers in this class, he had the most targets of 20-plus yards downfield, beating second place by 19 targets. So he had 49 of his 140 targets. They were downfield 20-plus yards. 18% of his other targets were screens, and even playing 20% of the snaps from the slot. My point with Rome Odunze here is the Washington Huskies literally let this guy do anything that he wants because he can work downfield. He can work intermediate. He can work short. You can feed him a screen pass every once in a while. He proved he was capable of moving all over the formation, doing anything that his coaches asked of him. When wide receivers crack this many fundamental traits boxes, that's when you got some special guys on your hands. And spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors' tail of the tape yet, All three of these guys check all four of these boxes so far, and all three of these guys are slam dunk top 10 guys for a reason. Number 5 is athleticism. And finally, we have some testing numbers because with Malik Neighbors and Marvin, we did not. Rome Odunze balled the F out at the NFL Scouting Combine. To go along with his already good size that we knew he had, 6'3", 212 pounds, he ran a 4.45 40-yard dash, which is a 93rd percentile weight-adjusted speed score. He ran an 83rd percentile burst score, jumping 39 inches. And if you guys watch the Combine, you'll know that Rome Odunze was one of the only receivers there to do the agility scores. And he has no reason to do that, right? Remember, Rome Odunze was locked in top 10 NFL draft pick. There's no reason he should be doing the agility drills. He could have very much done what Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors did, which was, I don't need to test. I'm already going super high. No harm, no foul to those guys. But the fact that this guy has the drive and the work ethic to do that stuff means that he is a very serious football player, and only Rondale Moore types are running a 4.03 short shuttle. That's a 96th percentile number. Again, not weight adjusted. When you think about the fact that he's 212 pounds versus most of the wide receivers that probably post that high of a number being 170, 180, that is an extremely impressive number. His testing numbers saw him post a 9.92 out of 10 relative athletic score. Again, that ranks 27th of all wide receivers at the Combine since 1987. So we're talking 99th percentile athleticism, almost identical actually to Braylon Edwards back in the day, if you're looking for an athletic comparison. When he was coming out of Michigan, basically the same size, exact same speed, pretty much the same jumping ability as well. Braylon Edwards and Rome Odunze is one that I've never actually really heard as a comparison, but athletically they line up almost identically. So number 6 in terms of fundamental traits of the wide receiver position is their production, because we know production is the most translatable skill from college to the pros. We're solving for fantasy production, ergo production means a lot. If there's a knock on Rome Odunze, it's that he wasn't an early declare, he dominated as a senior, and I get those concerns and they factored into my grade a little bit, but the film is absolutely outstanding with Rome Odunze. I think in this video, I've done a pretty good job of providing some of the context to his numbers. Like I said, his 2020 season was wiped out by COVID. The bottom line is I'd rather have a senior prospect like this who gets better every single year, improved in every statistical category every single year, from targets, yards, touchdowns, contested catch rate, all that kind of stuff, than have a Rondale Moore type of prospect profile of a guy that peaks as an 18-year-old freshman and never gets better the rest of his college career and gets force-fed screen targets. That is not the type of wide receiver prospect you want to buy into. The guy that gets better every single year is 100% the better bet in terms of a fantasy asset. Like I said, the 2020 COVID year is a factor you have to account for. He essentially was a junior this year because he did not play his freshman season, and he is the same age as Marvin Harrison Jr., even though Marvin doesn't get this knock on him because he was a junior and he's a true junior and he's an early declare. So led the country in contested catch rate at 74%, 24.4% target share, alongside Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan, who I have both top 12 graded wide receivers in this class. 22.78 PPR points per game in 2023, which again, 4th best of any best season in this class. And again, keep in mind who he's competing for targets with. 89.2 PFF receiving grade, 3rd best in this class. 3.72 yards per route run versus man coverage, 2nd best in this class. Again, remember who he's competing for targets with. He checks every single box: size, athleticism, film traits, alphaing, other NFL caliber talent, some of the subjective things that you want to factor into his grade as well. He's clearly a very hard worker given what he showed at the NFL Combine, not to mention his progression as a player from year to year and improve on some of those early career weaknesses as a young guy. He's smart. He has a well-refined understanding of the position, and me and Danny went really in depth on that in the film breakdown. He's good at recognizing zone coverage. He gets depth on his crossing routes versus cover 2. He does the little things right. He knows how to play the wide receiver position. He's got that dog mentality at the catch point as well. It's his ball if it's in the air. That's exactly what you want to see out of a number 1 wide receiver. And when you get to the final grade on Rome Odunze, my final grade is 88.25 out of 100, or just a smidge under a top 10 NFL draft talent or a mid-first rounder. Biggest strengths for Rome Odunze include his route running ability, his 3-level ability, his hands, his contested catches, his size, his physicality, his athleticism, and the high-level production that he had on the field in 2023 with other NFL talent on the field there. Biggest weaknesses in terms of where he lost grades for me is He is a senior coming out. He's not special yards after the catch wise. And I did notice a few times throughout his routes that he sometimes lost balance against more physical corners. But I'm really nitpicking here as a run blocker. Sometimes he sets a little bit high. Again, really nitpicking here, but Rome Odunze, definitely a very, very strong prospect. He's an absolute stud. He would have been my wide receiver 1 in last year's class over JSN, would have been my wide receiver 2 in 2022's class, right sandwiched in between Drake London and Garrett Wilson. And I think he's one of the highest floored players of anybody in this entire draft. In terms of pro comparisons, I already talked about the one that kind of makes some sense because athleticism-wise and profile-wise too, to be honest, he looks a lot like Braylon Edwards, projected to be a high draft pick, coming out as a senior, got a lot better his senior season. I've heard people say that he's a bigger Chris Olave. I don't mind that one, but I think Chris Olave wasn't nearly as strong at the catch point as what Rome Odunze represents. I've heard Jamar Chase as well, which again, I don't totally agree with that because Jamar Chase's best trait was his ability to work after the catch, and I think that's not necessarily Rome Odunze's best trait, but in terms of how they run routes, I think they're quite similar. Danny has Michael Pittman Jr. plus, which I also think is a pretty good comparison for him. My comp for him is actually like a smaller version of Mike Evans because I think both guys are very underrated separators. They're both great at the catch point. They can both do something yards after catch wise, but nothing special, and are both incredibly clean prospects coming out with great heads on their shoulders, work ethic wise, and great hands at the catch point, like I said. So Mike Evans, smaller Mike Evans, or Braylon Edwards, I think is good comps for Rome Odunze. In terms of ideal landing spot, again, we know he's going to go in the top 10 of the NFL draft. To me, the best landing spot he could go to would be to replace Keenan Allen in Los Angeles. I also really do like the prospect of him going to either the New York Giants or the New York Jets. The Giants at 6 need a do-it-all X wide receiver. The Jets need a guy to go along with Garrett Wilson. I believe realistically, he won't go as high as 5 overall to the Chargers because I think that Marvin and Malik Neighbors should be taken higher, and I think the NFL agrees on that. But at the same time, you never know. Maybe Marvin goes 4 to the Cardinals and the Chargers because Jim Harbaugh is an old school coach. The work ethic factor, the fact that he has more experience, he's not quite as raw as Malik Neighbors. I could see him going as high as 5 overall, but personally, I think where he will go and where he does fit really well is number 6 overall to the New York Giants if they don't go quarterback with that pick. Rookie draft outlook and how you should handle them for Dynasty. In terms of startup value, on our Dynasty trade value chart right now on Flock Fantasy, we do have rookies included in that, and I have Rome Odunze as my wide receiver 15 in Dynasty right now among veterans and other rookies, around that Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, Devontae Smith, Nico Collins, Rashee Rice type of range. So I'm very comfortable spending a top 36, 45-ish pick in a startup on Rome Odunze if you're doing startup drafts right now. In terms of rookie drafts, I have him right now in a tier behind Drake May, Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels as my firm 106 in Superflex formats. I think he's a better prospect at wide receiver than Jaden Daniels is at quarterback, but because of positional value in Superflex, the fact that Jaden Daniels, of course, runs, I probably would not take him over Jaden Daniels because of that startup value aspect of that quarterback position and how much value accumulation that Jaden Daniels has as a quarterback. But regardless, I think he is an excellent prospect. Absolutely love that I have a ton across my Dynasty leagues of 106s and 107s this year to load up on a ton of Rome Odunze shares. In one quarterback leagues, if you guys are playing those, 103 is where I would be taking Rome Odunze. The only way I would really take Brock Bowers over Rome Odunze is if you guys played in any kind of like heavy tight end premium format, or if you have like a equal roster at wide receiver and you're really, really down at tight end and you're in like a half tight end premium and you want to take Bowers over Odunze, that's probably fine with me, but I actually view him as almost like a mini tier ahead of Bowers, just given how good of a wide receiver prospect he is. We know wide receivers are like gold in Dynasty in terms of overall currency. And of course, if you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like down below, subscribe if this is the first time you're checking us out. If you want the entire film breakdown, me and Danny going for like half an hour on how good Rome Odunze's film is, all of those film breakdowns are coming very soon to the site, but we do have Marvin, Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze's live right now. Head on over to flockfantasy.com, use the promo code FSE. That gets you a 7-day free trial, 30% off any of the packages, all of our rankings, Dynasty, one quarterback, Superflex, prospect rankings, whatever, 6 months for free when you sign up annually as well. And you can also get a free Zoom consultation with one of us to talk about your Dynasty rosters. The best place to be if you're a Dynasty player. There's so much value over there. our draft guide, the film breakdowns, first priority to Dynasty decisions. All the other creators are creating a bunch of content on the site. Mason, Zach, and Badake, all the other guys from the domain, they're making great content up there. The trade value charts are also a big hit with you guys as well. The player cards that I showed you on the screen here for Rome Odunze are in the draft guide. So if you're interested in that, link down below in the pinned comment and in the description. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.